Knights of St. John. Valletta owes its existence entirely to the Knights of St. John. Specifically, it was Jean Parisot de Valletta, the Grand Master of the Order of St. John from 1557 to 1568, who was the key driving force behind the construction of this fortress city, designed to help Christian Europe against the ever-advancing Ottoman Empire. To set the context, consider that in the early 16th century, Charles V, who was both the Emperor of Spain and the Holy Roman Emperor, and Suleiman the Magnificent, who was the Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, had been locked in mortal combat for mastery over Europe for years. When Suleiman ascended to the Ottoman throne in 1520, it seemed at first that he would easily win the contest, as his armies marched from victory to victory. For example, Suleiman conquered Belgrade in 1521, and in 1523 he drove the Knights of St. John out of Rhodes, their traditional stronghold, after a brutal 6-month siege. This conquest of Rhodes by the Ottomans set in motion the chain of events that ultimately led to the founding of Valletta some 40 years later. After Rhodes, Suleiman went on to conquer the Balkans and Hungary, and by 1529 his 200,000-man army was besieging Vienna in the very heart of Europe. Although Suleiman was ultimately beaten back at the very gates of Vienna, which represented the never again to be exceeded pinnacle of Ottoman military power, the siege of Vienna had a profound psychological impact across Europe. It shocked Europe's monarchs into the realization that urgent action needed to be taken to counter the Ottoman threat. As one result of this newfound urgency, less than 6 months after the siege of Vienna, Charles V decided to grant Malta, Gozo and Tripoli on a perpetual lease to the Knights of St. John, who were still homeless after being expelled from Rhodes 7 years before. Charles was hoping to induce the Knights to help defend Europe's southern flank against the continual Ottoman raids on European coastal towns. Charles was not a greedy landlord. The rent he proposed to charge to the order was fixed at the nominal price of 1 Maltese falcon or hawk per annum. But even so, the Knights were reluctant to accept the offer. Malta was a small, desolate island, and many Knights still dreamed of reconquering Rhodes and moving back there to relive their glory days. However, in the end, the Knights put aside their misgivings and decided to move to Malta. They established their first capital in Burgu, across the Grand Harbour from Valletta, and began preparing to defend against the inevitable Ottoman attack.